My rival confessed his love and I couldn't resist. My name is Bob, and I always thought I was living the right life. 10 years of marriage with Coralie, 2 wonderful kids, Miles, 7, and little Lily, just 4, working as a lawyer in the family company I grew up in, and the sense of stability that comes from knowing you're in the right place. I never doubted that life could be any different. My passion for beauty pageants for young women was always my little secret world. I loved watching them blossom during training, gaining confidence, and even pampering myself by preparing them for the smallest details, from makeup to their walk. This hobby gave me a sense of control, joy, and creativity that everyday corporate life often lacked. Everything seemed stable and predictable until one morning, Bob Barnard appeared in my life. I had always seen him as a competitor. He was successful, charismatic, and incredibly attractive. Our encounters always ended with tension, both professional and personal. But that day, he approached me, not with a challenge for a business dispute, but with a candid look and an unexpected kiss. I froze, his lips met mine, and the world suddenly stopped. I felt something I hadn't remembered in years: a thrill, excitement, forbidden desire. When he stepped back, his eyes shone with sincerity. "I've always felt this for you since high school, and I can't keep it in anymore," he said. My heart was racing. I loved Coralie, my children were the center of my world, and I was truly happy with them. Yet, there was something in him that unlocked a part of me I had long hidden. I didn't know what to do. It was a conflict between stability and passion, duty and genuine desire. That night, I couldn't sleep. I recalled moments from the past, laughing with Coralie, playing with Miles and Lily, first meeting Barnard at a legal competition. All these memories intertwined with the warm feeling of his kiss. I felt guilty and, at the same time, an irresistible urge to explore this new sensation. I realized one thing: my life would never be the same again, and now I would have to make a choice. I never planned between the perfect world I had built and the desire that had suddenly surged to the surface. The days following that kiss were pure chaos for me. I tried to stay normal for Coralie and the kids, but inside, I felt a storm. Every glance from Barnard, every word he spoke at work, reminded me of what had happened, and I felt my heart race even when I tried to calm myself. I started avoiding Barnard, but he seemed determined not to let go. He found excuses to meet, for accidental touches, for looks that said more than words ever could. I realized how hard it was to resist these feelings. It was like a curse. The more I tried to suppress them, the stronger they became. At home, I tried to be the perfect husband and father. Coralie suspected nothing. She laughed, cooked dinner, played with the kids, and I felt warmth and guilt at the same time. How could I love someone I had known my whole life and feel such storms with another man? I tried to devote myself entirely to my family, but thoughts of Barnard were always there, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. One evening, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee after the kids had gone to bed, Barnard called me. His voice was soft, but there was something unspoken in it. "Bob, we need to talk," he said. A chill ran down my spine, yet my heart raced. I agreed to meet him. We sat on a small terrace near the office, and he looked me straight in the eyes. "I know this is wrong," he began, "but I can't hide it anymore. I love you. I always have, since high school. And every time I see you, my heart beats faster." I stayed silent. Words wouldn't come. I loved Coralie. I valued our relationship, our traditions, our children. But the love he awakened in me was so strong I couldn't ignore it. It was like two worlds colliding, one I had built for myself, and another that awakened my heart to a new life. That night I didn't sleep. I remembered moments from school, how Barnard laughed in class, how we argued in debates, and how he always seemed just out of reach. And now he was here, real, open, and brave. I felt like I was standing on the edge of an abyss. One step forward and my life would change forever. The week following the encounter with Barnard left me feeling torn in half. On one side was Coralie, my wife, my support, my family, her laughter, her warmth, her care for the kids. It was all an inseparable part of my life. I saw how she tried to make me happy, how we planned vacations together, discussed our future, and all the little things that seem insignificant but make life complete. On the other side was Barnard, his kiss, his words, his honesty. Every smile of his made my heart flutter. I felt my hands tremble when we accidentally touched in the office, and thoughts of him haunted me even at night. I tried not to give in, but the more I resisted my own feelings, the stronger they became. One evening after work, Barnard suggested going for a walk. We walked through the empty streets of the city, and I felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. "Bob," he began, "I know you're happy with Coralie, and I never wanted to ruin your life, but I can't keep silent anymore. I love you." The words echoed in my mind like a spell. I looked at him and saw not just a competitor, not just a man, but someone who reflected what I could become if I dared to follow my feelings. I wanted to run, yet I also felt that it was here, on this empty street, that I was truly alive, free of rules and limits. I began reflecting on my life and what I truly wanted. Coralie and I always talked about honesty, about openness. But now, I felt that any honesty could destroy everything we had built over the years. My heart was torn between duty and genuine passion. A few days later, I decided to talk to Coralie. We sat on the couch after dinner, the kids asleep, and I felt my chest tighten with fear. I didn't know how to start. Words got stuck in my throat. I realized that this conversation would change everything. But even before opening my mouth, thoughts of Barnard swept over me again. This internal struggle had become an inseparable part of my life. And then I realized I could no longer live ignoring what I truly felt. I would have to make a choice. And this decision would change everything. My life, my family, my heart. The following days were a trial for me. I tried to maintain a balance between my family and my new feelings, but it was nearly impossible. Every time I looked at Coralie, I saw happiness and trust in her eyes. She had no idea about the storm raging inside me. At home, everything seemed ordinary, dinners with the kids, Lily laughing when Miles tells funny school stories, our little rituals, cooking together, reading bedtime stories, hugging on the couch. Yet, in my mind, the same question kept spinning. What if I approached Barnard? One evening, when the kids were asleep, Coralie fell asleep beside me on the couch. I felt her warmth pulling me to stay close, but thoughts of Barnard would not leave me alone. I remembered that kiss on the terrace, how his hands held me confidently, how he looked at me with a sincerity that awakened the deepest feelings. Barnard sent me a message again. "Can we meet tomorrow? I just want to talk." I set the phone down on the table and stared at it for a long moment. It felt like standing on the edge of two worlds, one I had built over years, and another promising unpredictable emotions. The next day, we met in the park after work. The crisp autumn wind scattered the leaves, and I felt my heart beating faster with each step. Barnard looked at me and smiled, and that smile made me forget everything else. "I don't want to rush," he said, "but I want you to know the truth about my feelings." I listened to him, feeling my internal tension rise. I wanted to be honest with myself, but I didn't want to hurt Coralie. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads where every step could change my life forever. And then we began to communicate, not just with words, but through glances and touches, those small signs that speak louder than any words. That evening, returning home, I realized I could no longer live in uncertainty. My heart demanded a choice. I loved Coralie and valued our years together. But the love I felt for Barnard was so strong, I couldn't ignore it. This was the moment I understood I would have to make a choice. And that choice would determine everything. My life, my relationships, my happiness. The following weeks were a true test of patience and self-control. I tried to maintain normal relationships with Coralie while not pushing Barnard away. We met, discussed work, but still found excuses for brief encounters, accidental touches, glances that spoke louder than words. Coralie began to notice my distraction, which made me feel guilty. She would ask if everything was okay at work, why I sometimes seemed lost or distant during conversations. I tried to avoid the truth, afraid of destroying our relationship. Yet I felt my heart drawn to Barnard. Then we decided to try a so-called threesome. I thought it might help balance my family and new love. The first attempts were awkward and tense. Emotions overlapped, jealousy mixed with excitement, and uncertainty collided with unpredictable passion. Barnard was patient and understanding, but I could see that even he couldn't fully hide his own feelings. Coralie tried to make everything seem normal, but I saw confusion in her eyes. We all got caught up in a game meant to unite us, but in reality, it only emphasized the gap between reality and desire. I began to feel that the experiment wasn't working. My heart beat differently for each of them, but no feeling could replace true harmony. We tried to maintain a relationship among three, but it became obvious. Nothing can change the fact that each of us has our own desires and limits. One evening, after a tense day, we sat on the terrace at home, and I felt the tension reach its peak. I looked at Coralie and Barnard at the same time and realized it's impossible to continue living in uncertainty. My heart demanded a decision. I would have to choose, and this choice would change everything. My life, my relationships, my future. I remember the day I realized I could no longer live in uncertainty. Sitting on the terrace at home, staring at the dark city skyline, I felt my heart torn between Coralie and Barnard. I loved Coralie, I truly did, and I loved the kids. But Barnard awakened something entirely different in me, a sense of freedom, passion I hadn't felt in years. I knew the choice I made would change everything. I couldn't give myself to two worlds at once. That evening, I made the decision I would be with Barnard. Coralie deserved honesty, and I understood that continuing in uncertainty would only bring pain. The next morning, I sat down with Coralie and tried to speak calmly, though everything inside me was boiling. I explained that my heart could no longer remain in the marriage, that I loved her, that she was an amazing wife and mother, but I had to follow my feelings. Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt an incredible pain for having shattered her world. She was silent for minutes, then quietly said, "I understand. You need to be happy." I moved in with Barnard, and at first, everything felt like a dream. We spent time together, laughed, shared memories, plans, and dreams. I felt alive, yet guilt constantly shadowed me. Every time I thought of Coralie and the kids, my chest tightened. We tried to build our relationship, but I felt the emptiness of the past always lingering nearby. We tried everything, romantic evenings, trips together, but even Barnard couldn't replace what I had lost. I realized that life isn't just about following passion, but also accepting the consequences of your choices. And although I was with Barnard, a part of me would forever remain with Coralie. The first months with Barnard seemed perfect. We laughed, discussed plans, shared the small details of life we had never told anyone. But behind this idyll, there was something I hadn't noticed. Immediately, the reality of relationships was more complicated than any of my expectations. Barnard was a wonderful partner, but sometimes his insecurities showed in small ways. He wanted all my attention, was jealous of my memories of Coralie and the kids. At first, I dismissed it as minor, but over time, the tension grew. I felt I could no longer be fully myself, because every gesture, every word could spark conflict. I began to doubt, was it really right to leave Coralie? Did I truly choose Barnard, or was it just an escape from guilt and fear of loss? These thoughts tormented me every night. I replayed moments with my family, their smiles, our traditions, the children's laughter. I felt that a part of my heart remained there, and no emotions with Barnard could change that. One evening we argued. Barnard wanted to spend the weekend together, but I, thinking about the kids, suggested postponing. His gaze turned cold, and a heavy silence fell between us. "You've changed, Bob," he said quietly. "I feel like you're not the same as before." I realized Barnard's words were true. I wasn't the same as before meeting him. I carried the burden of choice, guilt for broken hearts, and the divide between past and present. We tried to talk, tried to understand each other, but something in our relationship was breaking, and I couldn't stop it. That night became a turning point. I realized that even when you follow your heart, life can throw challenges you never anticipate, and I understood that I might have to face even greater trials before I find peace and my own happiness. A few months after moving in with Barnard, I realized that our relationship wasn't what I had imagined. At first, everything seemed romantic and easy, but everyday life began highlighting the differences between us. Barnard had his ambitions, habits, and small annoying traits that I had once ignored, but now they became increasingly noticeable. We started arguing over trivial things. Someone didn't clean up after themselves. Someone spent too much time at work. Someone grew overly jealous. I saw that we no longer looked in the same direction. My passion for Barnard could not replace the deep emotional connection I had felt for Coralie. One evening, we argued again. I couldn't hold it in and said plainly, "Barnard, I don't know if I can be happy with you the way I imagined. This isn't what I expected." He remained silent, looking at me with sadness. and I realized our relationship had reached its limit. I began feeling an emptiness inside. My heart was broken, yet at the same time, I knew I couldn't return to Coralie. She had seen my choices, felt the pain, and our relationship had changed forever. The past became unreachable and the future uncertain. It was a time of reflection. I realized that life isn't just about passion and romance. It's about accepting consequences, about learning to live with the decisions you've made. I began thinking about a new beginning, about new relationships, about finding myself and feeling true happiness again. I understood that the moment had come to stop and reassess my values. I decided I would no longer run from myself, and that life gives a chance to start over without guilt, without doubts, with an open heart. After the end of my relationship with Barnard, I felt empty, yet at the same time ready for a fresh start. I realized that I couldn't live in the past, that guilt and sorrow only held me back. So I decided to open myself to new connections and opportunities. At first, these were simple encounters, coffee shops, work parties, casual conversations with strangers. I realized that the world was full of possibilities, and that every person could reveal something new to me. Meeting new people brought a sense of lightness, freedom, and sometimes laughter, which had been missing for months. One evening in a bookstore, I met Amelia. She was interesting, lively, and our conversation turned into a long walk through the city streets. I felt the tension that had held me captive for years slowly melting away with every word. Over time, I began to understand that new relationships weren't just about love or passion. They were about mutual understanding, respect, shared values, and support. I learned to listen to myself, to my true desires, while not forgetting the lessons of the past. I still didn't know where this new path would lead me, but I felt ready for whatever twists of fate awaited. My heart was open, and I was no longer afraid to feel, to love, to take risks. Life had given me a chance to start over, and I was ready to embrace it fully. Months passed after meeting Amelia, and I felt that my life was gaining a new meaning. We spent time together, discussing books, travels, and our dreams. I felt a lightness that had been missing for years. With each day, my heart opened more to new emotions and new possibilities. I realized that my life didn't end after the breakup. That passion and love were only part of the journey. The most important thing was to learn to love myself, understand my desires, and accept the consequences of my choices. I no longer felt guilty about the past. It had become a part of me, part of my experience. Amelia and I went on our first trip together, and I felt my heart beat calmly, sincerely, without fear. I looked at her and realized I had learned to appreciate life, to let go of the past, and to build something new. My family remained in my heart. My love for Coralie and the kids didn't disappear, but it was now a safe memory, a source of warmth, not a burden. I knew the path I had chosen wasn't easy, but it taught me to be honest with myself. I learned to value people, life, and the moments of happiness it gives. And I realized the most important thing, true happiness isn't just romance. It's inner peace, harmony with oneself, and a willingness to open up to the world. Standing on the balcony, watching the sunset, I understood my life is just beginning. I am ready for new challenges, new relationships, new emotions. And this time, I will move forward without fear, with an open heart and a soul ready to embrace life in all its fullness.